Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is Monday, May the 16th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And we didn't get any follow-through buying today. We did break higher. We closed a little bit lower, although we've still closed way off the previous lows. So, um, I was really hoping we'd get some follow-through today. We didn't. It doesn't mean that we can't still go higher. We could trade lower and break lower and make a higher low and go higher. We could just continue to trend on higher. Today was really just kind of a range day. It looks fairly bearish overall, although we did close off the lows. So it's not a super bearish bar, but you'll see it just looks like a range day when we flip over to the 2000 tick chart. So, but I wanted to give you a look at the daily chart just so you can kind of see what we're looking at. It looks like we're really bouncing between the lower envelope band and the next to the lowest band there. It looks like we're kind of caught in between those two. So we did close above the brown one, which is, I guess that's, if you're looking for something positive, that's about it today. Other than the fact that we closed off the low and we didn't make nearly as low a low today as we have in the previous day. So, I mean, you can see we were trading way down here. We made a low here, opened here. So we're way off of those lows by 100 points or so. So that's the only positive as today. It looks like we've opened higher and going higher so far today as well. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. Hopefully we'll continue to push higher. Today was not the easiest trading day, but let's flip over there and we'll take a look at the 2000 tick intraday. But here's a look at today's chart, and we've got a lot of new people, and I'm getting a ton of emails of people just really confused. Listen, this is very difficult trading, even for a good chart reader. So this is not easy to trade a day like this. There's no consistent lows really. There's a little bit of consistency on the low side. Notice every time we came to the highs, we turned down at a different place. Most of the time when we turned up, after about 10 o'clock, we turned up at different places. I mean, really, the only way to trade this is to try to buy these lows or sell these highs or trade the trend within. And there's not a lot of setups on the trends within. So this is these are difficult trading days. And so new people, you might be better off just not to even try to trade a day like this, because it's difficult for even an experienced, skilled chart reader. You can get chopped up easy in this stuff. But look, when you go into a little tight range like this, don't count second entries. Everywhere you see these little pink spots, don't count second entries. You want to count second entries in the trends that are moving up and down. But when you start going sideways, if you start trying to enter on a second entry, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to get chopped up. You're going to see a second entry and take it and fail. Then you're going to think it's a failure and take it, and that fails, and you just get chopped up. You can't trade second entries in sideways action. You can't do it. Now this whole day is kind of a sideways day, but the range is big enough that you can get trends within it, and you can trade the second entries on the trends. But when you start going sideways and you get congestion or a tight range, forget about second entries. You're just going to chop yourself up and chop yourself into bad trades and talk yourself into bad trades. But just understand that if you're new, these are very difficult trading days. You want days where it's straight up like this, or days where it's pretty much down like this. I mean, even this was kind of a range day that was kind of difficult, but you did have a pretty good down day after about 10 o'clock. Here's another range day. It's a hard day. This was pretty good right here from about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock on. This is a really nice trend, but look down here. Don't even try to trade that. It's so difficult to trade. You really need to be a skilled chart reader. Any of that right in there, any of that. When you start seeing prices above, below, or see the EMA in there, the blue. Let me just drill in here. And when you see the prices above and below, above and below, above and that's sideways action. You better know what you're doing if you trade that. Your best, just if you're a new chart reader and you're unskilled and you're not trading the sim and you're trying to trade live especially, you're just going to be a donator. All you're going to do is donate your money to somebody that knows what they're doing. because you're not going to be able to trade this. Even people that know what they're doing are going to make mistakes in this. It's easy to make mistakes. But it's easy to remember. As long as prices are consistently below the EMA, that's a downtrend. Trade it. But or as long as prices are above the EMA, that's an uptrend. Trade it. But when you start going sideways like this, you have to switch to range rules, and the only way to trade that is to find the lows and find the highs, and look for longs down here and look for shorts up here. And you don't get any consistency up here to really take any shorts. There's a few down here that you could buy, but the overall bias is down, so you got to be real careful buying. So this is just a hard day. So just keep that in mind. And, like I said, I don't mind answering some emails, but I'm just getting tons of emails with the same basic questions. And really the problem is not most of the questions I'm getting, the people are just too young. You're too new. You don't have a clue what you're even looking for. And so you're just really confusing yourself. But understand this is hard trading. All you want to do is try to figure out, are we trending or are we going sideways? If we're going sideways, you got to use range rules. And what are range rules? It means you buy the lows and sell the highs of the range. If it's trending, you want to use the trend rules. You look for setups at the trend line, preferably second entries. And it's really that simple. But most of you can't tell a range day from a trend day. And that's, you just don't have enough experience yet. So just keep working on it, keep practicing, and it'll come to you. So again, if you've got to need help with something, I'm happy to answer an email. But, I just can't answer an email every day with the same question over and over. But don't try to trade second entries in this range. I mean, it's as simple as that. So anyway, let's just get to the trades here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a rant. And again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from asking me for help or anything. But, when I get 25 emails from the same people over the last few days asking the same question over and over, the problem is you're so new, you just don't even know what to look for or where to start. Just keep reading. If you have the manual, keep reading it. If you don't have the manual, then you're trying to figure it out from these videos. I don't really teach how to trade in these videos. I share a lot of stuff here, and I give you a lot of basically, if you go back and watch all the videos, I go over everything we do, but I don't sit here every day and just start with the basics and teach the same things over and over. So it's really hard to put it together by watching these videos. Go to the website, read in the forum, purchase the manual, whatever you need to do to get you where you need to be, that's what you need to be doing. But if you have the manual, read it over and over and over, because there's too much information in there. There's no way you can read that once or twice and get a feel for what's going on. You need to read that thing over and over and over until it starts to kind of sink in and make sense. And some things in there build off other things, and there's just a lot of information in there that I don't care how smart you are, you can't take it all in a read or two. You've got to treat it like a study manual and read it over. Just take it by section and learn each section and read it over and over and over. And just anytime you got a few minutes to sit down and read, take a section and read it over several times, and just keep reading through it. And each time you read it, you'll pick up a little more, and another light will go off, and eventually you'll kind of get it. But this is a skill, and it's a difficult skill, and it's like learning. I've said this many times. This is really, you're learning to read this chart. If you can't read this chart, you're just wasting time. But when you learn to read this chart, then that's when things will start to make sense. And this is like learning any other non-native language. It's hard. It's just like if you're an English speaker only and you're trying to learn Russian or Chinese, think about how hard that is. Well, this is just the same way. You're trying to learn chart language, and it's like reading, if it's non-native, it's like trying to learn any non-native language. You got to immerse yourself in it and practice and work on it every day, and eventually you'll get better. But I've spent 9 minutes here and hadn't gone over this one trade, but I just want to make sure people understand the process. If you think you're going to buy a manual and read that manual and then pick this up and start trading and have success, and that's what most people think. Their expectations about day trading are so unrealistic. This is very difficult. It can be learned, but it's a skill, and it's a difficult skill. And it basically, we're chart readers. You can't trade patterns alone. The patterns only narrow down our entries, but you can see the same pattern over and over, and sometimes it's a good trade and sometimes it's not, and that's what you've got to learn. And that's where people get confused on this. They think they're going to learn a few patterns and come in here and take two-legged entries and they're going to make all this money. And if somebody told you that, somebody lied to you, because it doesn't work that way. You have to understand the context of the chart and then look for the pattern. So we're chart readers first and foremost, and then we use the patterns to narrow down our entry at the correct location. Where are the correct location? The key entry points. You'll hear me say that over and over and over. Where are the key entry points? If we're in a range like this, the support and the resistance, those are the key entry points on a range day. If it's a trend day or a trend within a range, the key entry points are the trend lines up and down. That's where all your key, if you look where every big move on this chart comes from, where does it come from? It comes from the key entry points. And I can show you that. You can take out charts and look at them over and over and over. And if you want to learn how to find the key entry points, just go open a chart and look for where the big moves are and know that there's some kind of support or resistance there. Trends are just slanted support and resistance. Ranges are just horizontal support and resistance. And prices go back and forth between those areas. That's what they do. They test the low, they test the high, and they just keep going until eventually they get a break, a new low, and then we're going the other direction. And you can see we're going low to high to low, and then we get a break, move to a new high, and then we're working down low to high, low, we get a break, new low, high to low, we get a break, two legs up, and we reverse. And now it's low to high, and it just does that over and over and over. But this is a range day, so the trends are not great examples, but there's still the exact same thing. So anyway, let's zoom in here, go through the trades, and wrap this day up. So let's zoom in here and go with the first trade here. All right, 7 o'clock came just as we're kind of chopping sideways, but you can see the trend line. We're working up it here. So even though there's a lot of sideways stuff, you can clearly see there's a new low right here. He tried to go lower once, he tried to go lower twice, and when that failed right there, look at it rocket up. And that's what the smart traders are looking for. They're looking for that trap. And I'll say this again too. I get a lot of questions about failures and people are missing the boat. They're totally off. This is an advanced trade, a failure. So if you're working on the basics, don't try to trade these because you'll just get yourself chopped to pieces. Wait, these you want to learn organically. They just kind of come to you naturally as you get good at the rest of it. So concentrate on the basics. Forget about failures and failed second entries and that kind of thing. Because you really need to know what you're doing. And most of the time when people send me these and they fail, they're not even close. They're not even on the right page. So they obviously don't understand them. So that's another one. Just skip these. We have people of all levels that watch the video, so I talk about all of them. But if it doesn't make sense, if one of our trades doesn't make sense or it's more advanced, just don't worry too much about it because you'll just confuse yourself trying to learn that along with the basics. That's the reason I don't teach these in the manual because they're too complicated. You need to be very experienced, and most people will just they'll just end up being donators trying to trade these. Don't be a donator. Stick to the easy. You only need one or two really good trades a day. And there's always 2 or 3 great second entries, and I'll show them to you today. Even on this range day, I'll show you some great second entries. And if you just wait on those, you'll probably make money. So just be patient and don't press these trades. So anyway, first trade here is a failure, and you can see it was a trap. When you see it rocket up like that after trying to go down a bunch of times, that tells you they trapped a bunch of shorts. And all those shorts have to exit. And you can see how it rockets up real quick. And the new longs come back in as well, and they jump on, and it just creates a lot of momentum, and off it goes. But as soon as all that momentum runs out, then the bottom falls out of it. And you got 2 quick measured legs down. I'm pretty sure if that's not a measured leg, it's real close, and you can see that. And then you get a correction there. And just draw your short-term trend lines off the first 2 swings. You get a close and new high. I mark this one green because generally you want to wait on the lower high, and you don't get one here. Suddenly you get a first entry, and then you get a second entry. So that's another failure. But here you would expect prices to try to retest this low. But timing is everything. People get these wrong a lot. And generally, if you wait on a lower high, you just won't, and all a lower high does is give you more, excuse me, I didn't mean to do that. It just gives you more proof that this correction is over. Because that's the key. It's just going to be your timing. Obviously, you would expect prices. You've already had a close in a new high here, and then you got this really strong trend, and you got your first close outside. So you're going to probably get a retest of the low, just like we did right there. It's actually a couple of legs down to a new low. But you got to let this play out first. And your timing is everything. And sometimes you'll enter right here, and it'll make one more push up, because sometimes it makes two legs to a new high. So you got to be careful. That's where most people make their mistake. That's why I marked that one green and not red, because we could make another push up. And just like right here, you're coming down, you try to go higher once, twice, and you got that big bearish bar. As long as you got room to scalp out there, I'd take that trade. That's a quick, easy move. And then now you've got your break, two legs to a new low, and you're headed higher. And here it is again. First entry, and then there's a second entry. Of course, that signal bar is no good, and you got a trend working up, so you got to be careful. But notice what happens. It gets a close outside a new high. It still gives you a scalp, but it comes back and then gives you a second entry on a double top, and that's the better entry. You got plenty of room back there, but you could actually try to enter right there if you wanted, because it's a little sideways and you got a failed breakout. As long as you got room to get out before those little lows, you could actually take that one. Again, it's green because you just don't know. And if you catch this trade, that's probably the only trade you need today. If you just waited on the second entry short, this is played out. You get a lower high and you get a second entry, a nice signal bar. And that's what I'm talking about. Just wait on the basics and then look at that move. And guaranteed you probably get a runner here, and that's the only trade you need today. Even if you got a runner on one contract there and you just go down till you get the first break higher, there's 1,200 points on a single contract in 3 minutes and 16 seconds, 24 points. So the key is being patient and waiting on these good setups. But look how this channel works. Coming down, you get a break, a couple of swings to a new low, then you got one moving up. You get a break, move to a new high, and we just kind of went sideways here. Don't try to enter in that stuff. Skip it, because you'll just get chopped up. Now, you got to break at a new high here, and you're way away from the EMA, so maybe you take that one. I'll give you a green on that one. But a lot of times you'll get chopped up. You do get a lower high here, but by that time you're right into those lows right there. It would have worked, but just you don't know that. It could bounce earlier. And then by the time it's just going sideways, this one's real tempting, but I wouldn't take it either. Just stay out of that, and you'll save yourself a lot of headache. And then we come down to the lows. Look how many times we bounced down here. We went a little lower these last couple of times, but this is a higher low from here. And then you actually get a bounce here. I didn't mark this trade, but that's another one. You could argue you should be at least green, and you could argue for that to maybe be blue, because we'll probably come back to the EMA, and we'll probably come back and test this breakout, and we may hit the low of the range and go all the way to the other side. But generally, you're better off to wait on the reversal, which again is an advanced trade. So you new guys, as good as tempting as these are going to be, skip them, because you're just going to chop yourself up. But notice the new low. You try to go short once, you try to go short twice. Just go long right there, if you know what you're doing. And you can see you probably get another runner here, and this just takes off. And again, what are we doing? We're trying to buy the low of the range. What were we doing on these others? We're playing the trends that play out and start new. And right here, we're playing the trend and the low and reversal off the low of the range. So you're playing the combination of both, which gives it even, you can see it's right off the key entry point. So that just gives it more reasons to like that trade. But you got that reversal going there. And again, it runs pretty much where we've had the last few highs kind of. You can see most of the turns were in here. They're not consistent though, so it's really hard to judge where they're going to play out. And so you got to be super careful. And you can see here, you got a break, a couple legs up, and it looks like it's going to play out, and it runs up one more time. And that's But that's really because you got this sideways stuff and it bounced, and they ran all the stops and made people think it's going higher, and then they turn it down. And so it's tricky. And so you got to be real careful here. But you got the failed breakout. No setup there really. You got a lower high here. Prices have really moved too far to be a lower high. There's still room to those lows, but I don't think I take that trade right there. It's, you know, you could argue for it to be green maybe, but it's if it would have pulled back and tested here and gave you plenty of room back down, maybe you take it. And of course it drops on down, and you come back. There's actually a second entry right there, but it's just not much room to those lows. I think it would have worked. I mean, I think there's more than 6 ticks in there. It just is 6, so it would have worked, but there's not a lot of room to play with right there. And this is the danger, that it bounces where that little double bottom is, and that's what it did. And it runs up here, and then people think it's going to go higher, and people that don't understand how to trade this try to get long, and then it breaks 1 tick higher and traps them in and turns straight down. You got a trend working lower here, so stay with it. And really, you're just going sideways here. So you may take this one. It actually breaks higher. I don't think I'd wait and go short here. But when this broke higher and turned down, when it went out below there, you might trade that on an engulfing bar, because you're probably going to the other side of the channel. That's just not a very, I mean, it's just so much stem there. That concerns me a little bit. Otherwise, you could have gone short here if you still got enough room to get out. Lower high here, but obviously you don't have any room there. Again, it would have worked, but you don't have any room. You just can't trade that. Then it comes back to the key entry point, and if that would have been a bearish bar and you had enough room, actually since you've already pushed through, you got plenty of room to here, I'd probably take that trade, but that bar is too bullish, so you can't take it. And this is just sideways, so you're not counting second entries in here anymore. Then of course it does off the key entry point. It just takes off, keeps chopping lower. There's no setups in here. And then suddenly you get a first break, but then there's you a second entry short, a very bearish signal bar, plenty of room to get out. And you got to watch where these last lows were too, and there's plenty of room there, and that's, boom, another easy trade. You don't get a good runner on this one because you're near the lows of the range, and this is all playing out. And of course it does bounce here. I don't see anything that would tempt me to go long here. And then we just start going sideways. No setup to go short there. Finally, you get a move here. This is still a lower high on a breakout, and there are 2 legs up. Again, you're not looking for second entries, but if you get a regular setup, and it is a second entry too, then pay attention to it. Because somebody said had talked about in the email that I said that I was talking about taking a second entry. Yeah, if it is a second entry, pay attention to it, but you're not looking for second entries and saying, okay, I got a second entry here, so I'm going short. You got to have range rule reasons to go short, and if you do, and it is a second entry on top of it, then pay attention to it, because the market tends to move in twos, even in this chop. The problem is you just don't know how far it's going to go or where it's going to go in the chop. It can break 1 tick higher or 1 tick lower and reverse on you too quick. So you're trading this because you've got a breakout on basically a double top or a lower high, and you got plenty of room, big bearish bar, and you got plenty of room back to the lows. And you see they probably trapped the longs here and then ran them out the other side and ran all their stops on this side and then turned it right back up. That's classic of how they do. That it'll fail, and it might fail multiple times out of this range before it ends up getting a direction. And we just came off the lows, so if it's gonna be successful on a breakout, it'll probably be to the upside. It's not 100% given, but that's what you would expect because we just came off the lows of the range. So now we're going to go back up and test the highs. And here we go. We got a trend working up. Unfortunately, you don't get a good setup on the way up, but there it is. You get this first entry long and a first entry short, and that's like a breakout pullback long, but I wouldn't take that trade. I think it's too risky there. You'd want to wait and see if you get a failure, and you just don't get it. You do get a failure, but it's way up here, and that sideways doesn't set up right. And unfortunately, you don't get a setup to take this higher. And then you get the break and a couple of swings up to a new low, and then guess what? Now you're going the other direction. Now you got a trend working down. Now right here, Notice you shoot right through the EMA. That's already telling you, hey, this thing's changed to the upside. We're probably going lower. And then you get a first entry, second entry. It is a little bit congested, but guarantee you they trap longs right there. And that's a big bearish bar. I like going short there. And then you get a failed second entry long that breaks higher right there and turns down. I don't think I'd wait and go short way down here because that bar is like, well, didn't mean to do that. That bar is like 22 ticks. I mean, that's not as bad as some we see, but that's still a big bar, and you're going short way down here at the very low. I'd probably enter that on the engulfing bar, but you could actually, with that being a trap, you could take that trade, and you see it easily works. But notice how it doesn't go much further, and then you get a break, a new low, and the problem here is you're just chopping sideways. And here's a good example. You get a first entry, second entry, and you're at the top of the range. Doesn't close on its low. It does. You get a 2-bar matching low, and if you take that, you get burned, and it goes one more. It goes one more swing higher. So that's what I'm talking about timing, and you just can't pick it on the second entries. And when you get a failed breakout, I generally wait on the lower high to be sure the correction's over, because that's all this is a correction here. And you got to time that correction perfectly, or you could get stopped out like right there. And that's a second entry. And it's with the trend, but look at this sideways stuff. And we just fell out the bottom, so there's a good chance we'll fell out the top. You just got to time it right. So wait on those lower highs. Then we just run down, and you can see we're still just kind of chopping. The market just doesn't have any real direction here. You're just going sideways. Here's another one, first entry, second entry. And there is a little bit of congestion here, so you might could say, hey, we may run back to the EMA, and you do have your break and new low. So that's one you could argue to be green, but guess what? Sometimes you'll get it wrong. Look right here if you tried that. It runs down and goes a tick or two lower and then goes right where you thought it would go. Of course, this is not a second entry, though. This is your second entry, and then it takes off. So you got to put all this stuff together, and it's all important. And I didn't draw it, but there's a little trend channel working down. You get a break and new low, and then there's a second entry long, and you're a little ways from the EMA, so it's probably going to snap back. But it could break higher and make a second leg down and then go higher. And that's where you got to be careful. Here, this is really a triple test here. It's too bad that signal bar is not a little better, because you got a nice triple test there. You can see that right across there. Made your low, you test it once, you test it twice, and you got a second entry there too. If that was a little better signal bar, and you might, I mean, that almost closes in the upper third. I mean, that you could argue for that one, but you better know what you're doing if you take that kind of trade. And look at it go. You come back and you get a second entry here, and here it is again. Technically, this is just sideways, so that really looks just like one leg. That doesn't look like a leg down. That looks like a leg down. So you got to be careful taking that as a second entry, because that's the whole idea behind the second entries is you're looking for two legs. The market tends to move in twos. This just looks like sideways, and that's how I determine if I want to count that as a double top, as a new high, or if I want to count that as a first entry and this is a second entry. So you got to be careful with those. And then of course where do we bounce? Key entry point. Of course, you probably wouldn't have this key entry point yet, but there it is. The next bounce, key entry point. Again, no setup there, and then we're just chopping sideways again. And there's just not many setups in here. It's just hard to. There is a lower high here, but that's a little bit congested, and it does try to go higher twice. So that's one that you might could argue for too. There's probably a lot of green ones in here. You know, you got to be picky with them though. And of course, we do end up going higher. I don't see any setups in there. And then you get a first entry, second entry. I didn't mark this because we're still above the EMA. We're above the trend channel. There's not much room at all back to both the support and the EMA, and it could bounce there on you. So I don't like that one. But if you wait a few minutes later, you get a lower high here. Now this has moved a little far for a lower high, but it is right off the previous resistance that's now acting as resistance again. I mean, that's where the range high was. So getting a good setup there is one you might take. The only reason this is not red is because it's moved a little bit far for a lower high. But I still like the fact that That's the high of the range. If it would have come back and tested it again and give you a second entry, I'd be all about it. And this one's another one. You know, if you traded it on the engulfing bar with enough room back, maybe you take it too. You could argue for it to be green, but of course it would be a green one. And then we run down here and then we bounce a little bit and start chopping sideways. But here you get a failed breakout, and guess what? Now you get that double test of the original range, big bearish bar, plenty of room back, and guess what? It's also a second entry short. And look what happens off the key entry point up here. Boom. And if you catch that, that's the only one you need today probably. I mean, if you just catch that one move straight to where it goes into congestion, I mean, that's $8 or $9, that's $400 or $500 right there on one contract. Patience and waiting on the good setups. And of course, we just chop on down and then go sideways into 230. So nothing else really there. So a lot of green ones in there. You got to be real careful with this stuff. And so hopefully me going over this range and trend stuff will help some of you today. But if it's not making sense to you, you're just not there yet. You're not even, you don't have the basics yet. And so you got to work on that and give it time and be patient, because you're not going to learn this overnight. You're not going to read a manual and be trading tomorrow and making money. It doesn't work like that. If anybody tells you they got a strategy or they've got an indicator or they got some software and all you got to do is spend a couple of days reading this book or manual and put it all together and you're going to be making money, run as fast as you can go, because they're just going to take your money, because that's not realistic, and trading doesn't work like that. The only way, this is my opinion, the only way you can make money as a day trader is to be able to read this chart right in front of you. If you can't read this chart and understand what prices are doing, you're just gambling. And you're going to get it right sometimes, and you're going to get it wrong sometimes, and you're probably going to lose money. But if you get to where you can read this chart and you understand what prices are doing, as hard as it might be to believe, you can get it right 7, 8, 9, 10, 9 times out of 10. You're going to always have some losers. That's just part of trading. But you'll be shocked at how good you can get at this. And we got traders that can do it. They can not. I'm not just saying I can do it. Other traders are doing it. They're getting it right 7, 8, and 9 times out of 10 consistently. Not just a few of them, a bunch of them. It can be done, but you're not going to do it overnight. And if anybody tells you you can, or they got the secret on how to do it, well, if you want to hand them your money, don't say I didn't tell you so. The only way to do this, even if you don't want to do what we do, the only way to learn to make money consistently as a day trader is to learn to read this chart. Now, if you want to go learn from somebody else, I'd rather you do that than go buy some indicator or go buy some software or buy something from somebody that says they got the secret, they got the Holy Grail. There's some great marketers out there, and that's what their job is to convince you they got the right idea and they market it just right and it sounds wonderful and you buy it and it doesn't work. That's what happens over and over and over to people, and then they don't trust anybody. And I understand why. I fell for all that too early on, years and years ago. I fell for all up till I finally said enough is enough. I'm going to figure this out. And I got somebody to help me that was successful, and I learned this. I learned the real secret. The secret is you got to learn to read the chart, and that takes time and hard work. And again, it's just like learning to read any kind of foreign language, non-native foreign language. This chart's just like that. And you're not going to go learn if you're an English speaker and that's the only language you know, you're not going to go learn to read Russian tomorrow. You're probably not going to learn it next week. You're probably not going to learn it next year. But if you keep working on it, before long, you can learn it. Same thing with Chinese. If you're let's say your Chinese is your native language, and you want to learn to speak Russian, how hard is that going to be? If you're Chinese and you learned English, how hard was that? You didn't learn it overnight. You may not even be fluent now. You may have a hard time following me in my southern accent. But if you keep at it, eventually you'll learn it. And it's the same thing when we're reading this chart. So I hope that's helpful to people. And I just picked Russian or some of the Chinese languages out of the blue because they're difficult languages. if you're non-native to them. So, and this is a difficult language. If you're not, and everybody's non-native to this until you learn it. So that's why I like to make that comparison. So anyway, I hope this has been a good chart lesson. It's a little longer than I like, but there's a lot of information here, and I wanted to get some people some help with this range and stuff. So I don't, like I said, I don't mind you sending me an email, but you just can't ask me the same question every day and not get it and me answer it, because, and the reason is you're not far enough along to even understand the answer. So just keep working on it and just be patient and study it and keep reading the manual. Keep reading. If you're a member of our website, even if you're not, there's tons of free information there. You don't have to be a member or buy anything. It's all there on the website. You'll have a harder time putting it together, but it's all there. Go read it. Man, there's so much stuff on that website that's free, and people don't realize it's there because they won't take time to go investigate it. But go investigate it. Look at it. Join our forum. You can join that for peanuts. Doesn't cost you much at all. $10 a month, and you can get unlimited access to the forum. Ask all the questions you want. Get help. Talk to people. Learn as other people are learning. You'd be shocked what you can learn there. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up and get off my high horse today. I feel like I've been preaching to people, and I don't intend to do that. I get as frustrated as you guys do, and sometimes it's tough. So anyway, hope you had a good day today. It's a tough day. If you didn't, don't let it beat you up. Just come back tomorrow and learn from it. Learn from it and move forward. And it's one step at a time, and eventually you'll get it. But I'm almost 40 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this thing up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next